welcome everybody to Beyond the Pew.
We're back.
Here we
Another
are.
episode.
Live.
Another episode. I know it's going to be
Another
asked.
episode, another
I have
day.
no idea what episode it is.
28.
29.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We're here. Pastor Eric Gill,
Excited to be here.
MDiv. We have Pastor Steve Bogran.
That's it.
Bogran.
Bogran.
What?
It smells.
Appreciate that.
What does it mean?
Entiendo español un poco.
You know,
What does it?
Steve
What does
Bogran.
Bogran mean?
in French, it means tall and beautiful.
Tall and beautiful.
They got it
I
wrong.
played. I don't know why I got that. But
Well, in some places in the world, you may be considered tall and beautiful.
Wow, that's the most
Right?
Man,
encouraging.
Pastor, thank you.
That's the most
true.
encouraging thing I
I'm
ever
about to
heard
cry
you
right
say.
now.
Listen,
that's my pastor.
yeah.
That's my pastor, America.
So
Pastor
what,
Eric, you
so
and
what
Bill.
about you? What was your last name?
Rosa. Yeah.
From-
Well, it still is. What was my last name? It is. It's Rosa.
Yeah, but no. What is
Yeah.
it from originally?
We've covered this already
Yeah,
on
but-
this podcast. Can I just bring a point
Episode
though?
3.
Yeah, but
The
don't.
dedication and commitment of this man right here, because he's wearing a New York Yankees hat
Yup.
after they just got
Got
clean swept by.
Takes one to know one. You're
the
wearing the
Houston-
Bills fan.
the
You go to the
Houston-
Super
they
Bowl.
didn't-
Actually, not now every year, but you still haven't won anything.
First of all,
You
I
should
didn't go
wear
to the
it.
Super Bowl. The Bills went to the Super Bowl,
Yeah, the
so
Bills.
I didn't go.
The Bills.
But yes, that was over 20 years ago.
Yeah,
now.
so
I
the
mean,
commitment
I don't
of
even. Were you even alive? Were you alive when the Bills went to the Super Bowls?
No.
90.
So you're
91,
talking about
right?
something that you weren't even.
No,
like,
actually,
born
when
for.
was it?
91 was the first
I
one.
don't know.
right?
I'm just talking about stuff that's happened right now.
Yeah. So-
Series sweep, that's brutal, especially
Yeah.
against the Astros.
Yeah, come on. So you act like
50
you're wearing
I
the
think
Bills
there was
fan, like
over
acting like it's a
50
winning team.
50 strikeouts by
Sorry,
the
do you
Yankees
watch
that
baseball?
year.
What's
He
your
gets all
team?
fired up.
What's your team?
He gets
All right,
fired
let's
up.
pray,
Baseball,
guys.
I'm a man without a team right now.
Oh, why? Why is that?
We've covered this as well on the podcast.
because your team is not longer
He's in a bad mood today.
Guardians.
He's in
That's
a
your
bad
team.
Steve.
Listen, 330-331-6453.
Boom.
So nail that.
Yes.
You feeling good
So-
today, aren't you?
Yeah.
You
yeah.
feeling good today.
So- That's
He's
where
not-
you
he's
can.
not getting
That
swept.
is where you
Listen,
can.
The Yankees got swept.
He is not in a very good mood today.
That
And
is
so
where you can text
we have
your,
to
your
apologize.
questions.
We have to apologize to our viewing audience, our worldwide viewing audience.
Listen, I already heard it, so it's not from Hawaii or Alaska, okay?
You already what?
It's around the world. It's not Hawaii or Alaska.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Just want to clarify.
You
Around
have the
the
power
world.
today,
Oh, we're-
Pastor Eric Gill.
Ooh.
Can I ask a question before we gave you all this credit for saying the phone number? Is the phone number on that sheet in front of you?
Yeah, but I didn't read it.
Okay, it is.
It was
Okay.
upside down.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
330
Yep.
331
Yeah.
6453. So
It's good.
Is it correct?
very nice.
Yeah, I know.
So
good.
why don't we start with this? Since you're questioning my integrity,
I'm not at
how do
all.
we know the Bible is trustworthy?
Wow.
I went there.
Woo. Man,
It's a little hot in here. Can-
you want to dive right in.
Yeah.
Pastor Steve, why don't you answer that question to start
No,
off
no,
with?
I'm in charge of that.
Yeah, I
asked
was
you
just saying.
first. He
I
asked
want to
you
include
first.
Steve, too.
Yeah,
No,
we'll
let me
get to
go.
him second.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. So what's the question? Say it again.
How do we know the Bible is trustworthy?
How do we know the Bible is trustworthy? Yeah, I think the self-attestation of the Bible is what leads us to our understanding of the trustworthiness of the Bible. Self-attestation being that the Bible itself proclaims concerning itself that it is inspired of God. 2 Timothy 3, 16, 17, where all scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for correction and doctrine and training in righteousness, that the man of God may be thoroughly equipped. So the Bible itself speaks of itself as being breathed out by God. So if it's from God, and God is trustworthy, dependable, reliable, we then have a trustworthy word
Yeah.
that God has promised to us, and God has promised in his word that he would preserve his word. Heaven and earth will pass away, but his words will endure. And so, I think the self-attestation of the Bible concerning itself is what allows us to come to this conclusion about the inspiration of Scripture. Peter said it as well.
Yep.
1 Peter 1:21. It's either 1 Peter, 2 Peter 1:21. It's either
Either
first
one.
or second. But it
About
talks
Paul.
about holy men of God wrote as they were carried along by the Holy Spirit. And so, so we know it's trustworthy, but it's true that in our understanding of the trustworthiness and reliability, dependability of Scripture, there is an element of faith to that. We believe
Yeah.
because God has given us the faith to believe.
Yeah.
And so we have to hold the Scriptures as true.
Yeah.
So I think that's an
No,
overarching
that's
way
a
to
good
say
way
it.
to put it.
Yeah.
You want to add anything to that, Bruce? Steve?
No, he took my verse. He took
took
my
your
one
verse?
verse I had, but it's okay.
Nice.
I tried to
So-
let you answer it first, but Eric's
Yeah, no,
on
but
the
that's
power.
not-
He's on a
yeah,
power
pa-
trip
I-
today.
You answered
Listen,
way better than I would have.
So, but it's okay because he's going to answer this one. Steve, what is or should church tradition guide how we worship?
Church tradition.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what it is. But I mean, I grew
What
up.
do you mean by that?
I grew Southern Baptist. I grew up in the South. There's a lot of traditions that you keep, but it has no purpose, no meaning behind it, like no biblical backing. Like for instance, one is you could not eat in the auditorium because that's the house of the Lord. That's what that was. That was viewed, and I got in trouble a couple times because I had some youth events in the auditorium, had food in there.
No, you had food in there.
Yeah.
you didn't.
And it was the only thing that divided was a wall. I could eat on this side, but I couldn't eat on this side.
Okay.
So
Like
that's
the
that.
tabernacle.
But I mean, Hebrews talks about that, to be careful with traditions because it distracts you from the truth of who Jesus, what Jesus did for us. Only He can save us. Because I think a lot of people put their hope in those traditions. I mean,
Yeah.
Catholicism, that's what
Yeah.
one of the reasons why my mom grew up Catholic and she came to know the Lord, because she asked, why do I have to go to a sinner to ask for forgiveness to God, like the
Yeah.
priest, because it was a traditional
Yeah.
thing. So I think the dangers of having tradition in the church is that you're placing your hope that God's going to love you more, or even your salvation
Yeah.
in those, I think Paul even says, examine your life daily. And I think is, okay, why do I do the things that I do? Am I doing it because I love the Lord and it's helping me grow? Or am I doing it because I've done this at VBS since I was 6? Kind of deal. So,
And I think that, like, to give credit, like, when you think of tradition, there are some traditions that start out as a way of cautious.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the initial intent for those tradition was even to protect the people or to help the people get a better understanding or a better or place them in a position where they can better worship or better grow in their relationship with God. But the problem to what you're saying is when that becomes the standard of a spirituality.
Yeah.
We must do all of these traditions in order to grow. We must do all of this tradition in order to worship God. And if we do not keep these traditions, then we're falling short of the glory of God.
Yeah.
And so that's when you're going to lean on the other side of become a Pharisee, right? That's what Pharisees did. It's like they saw the law that God gave the nation, and they felt the necessity of including more laws. And it would have been one thing if those laws would have been like for personal conviction, but the problem became when they started putting those laws as a requirement for everybody else. And in doing so, if people didn't keep those laws, then they were breaking all of the law. That's what their mind said.
because I think it's just, for me, is this helping you know God more and helping you serve Him more? Yeah. But if you're, again, like I said, if you're placed in your, I need to do this because God's going to love me more, I think that's when the issue comes into play.
Like I give you an example of tradition. Like, you come to church and you close your eyes when you pray. Like, there's an unwritten tradition in many places where, there's not really a Bible verse that would say you must close your eyes when you pray. But there is an aspect of when you close your eyes and you're praying, it helps you in not being distracted by what's happening around you. Sure. And so it's a good tradition that, in the sense that it protects you into doing that. But it becomes a danger when, if this person has his eyes open, now he's in sin. Like, I will never forget in school one time, I was in line and somebody was praying, and I was with my eyes open, and I was looking around, and the teacher comes and she's like, well, why is your eyes open? Like, why aren't you praying? I'm like, how did you find out that I was?
So why your eyes open?
Yeah, your eyes. I said, but then I got in trouble. So
yeah, you lost that battle.
I lost it very quickly. So, but yeah, that would be an example of that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. What about you,
Good.
Pastor Bruce?
Those are excellent answers. Can you read the question one more time for me? I know it's about
Should church tradition guide how we worship?
So I think that to answer the question specifically, the answer would be no, in the sense of church tradition should not be the standalone guide, right? So our guide for church worship should start with Scripture, which you guys have talked about and you guys have alluded to. Tradition that is biblically based, biblically commanded, should not be rejected just because it's tradition, but we also shouldn't just automatically follow tradition, right? So it has to be based upon Scripture.
Yeah.
There are plenty of things that have done traditionally in certain ways in worship that are done because they're biblical. We should keep those things. There are plenty of things that have done in a traditional setting that are not necessarily biblical that are okay to keep if we so choose to, but we also aren't mandated to. I think one of the things that's a dangerous thing, though, is we can be very quick, myself included, to automatically want to reject tradition. That if we say, well, that's not biblical, that's just what the church did all the time when they were in the early church. whereas it's true, it's not necessarily mandated by
Yeah.
God that you must keep these traditions. There are a lot of things that are done, traditionally done, that were done on purpose and for a purpose that would be good to hold fast to.
Yeah.
And to be able to incorporate into what we do and how we
Yeah.
do it. And so I think the danger is we don't want to reject tradition simply because it's not necessarily mandated.
Yeah.
We can learn from that. I think we can grow, but there are certain things we have to hold on to loosely.
Mm-hmm.
And the danger is exactly what you guys have both said, is when we begin to elevate tradition above or at the same level of biblical teaching.
Yeah.
And that's not what tradition's meant to do. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're doing there's a serious podcast right now on parenting.
Yep.
And today the topic is on social media and the
Yeah.
impact that it has on the students or on the children or on our kids. But
Yeah.
before we dive into that, one last question, and I think this is a really and it's a good segue to the parenting quest or section of the podcast. But the question is, it used to be frowned upon in many churches for Christians to dance or to go to movies. But now these things are generally seen as normal in Christian culture. Other than these things that are clearly called sinful in the Bible, are there practices that are currently frowned upon in churches that you could see becoming normal for Christians? You get the question?
Yeah. So there are certain practices right now that believers are okay with participating in.
That back in the days
Yeah,
were
going
not.
to a
not.
movie theater,
Yeah.
going to
Playing
a
cards,
bar,
playing cards.
playing
poker,
cards, things like that.
yeah.
That
The
at one
Bachelor.
point in time were considered to be
Bachelor.
that at one time were considered to be thou shalt nots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not because scripture forbid it, but because culture, tradition,
Yeah.
the church forbid it, right, for Christians. And now, current day, are there certain things that would fall into that category? And I would say absolutely there are. As far as to list what some of those things are, I think some of the more recent things that have been pronounced maybe in Christian communities that maybe 30, 40 years ago would not have been, and I don't even want to say accepted, but maybe given more leeway, is in the area of tattoos, drinking, smoking cigars, and even in the area we just talked about, like as far as poker, playing poker, things like that. I say all those things because I know in particular a lot of young adults, but also even middle-aged adults that participate in all of those things.
Yeah.
They will have a casual drink, but they will not do it in excess. They'll smoke a cigar, again, not in excess, with, a community of people or in a social setting. Some will play poker, again, not in excess or in a way that is damaging to their family, but in a social setting.
Yeah.
And some that will even, as it relates to tattoos and things like that, feel the freedom to be able to get a tattoo and not. Now, I list all those things not because I'm endorsing those things. I'm not. I'm not
But
saying.
you're answering the question.
Yeah, I'm not endorsing those things. I'm saying those would be 4 examples in my mind right away off the top of my head that right now are pretty prevalent amongst people who would call themselves followers of Christ.
Yeah.
That they feel the freedom to participate in those things, and it's pretty prevalent within the church that people are participating in those things. And I don't know that there is such hard line stances against those things present day as there was 30, 40 years ago.
Yep.
And part of the reason for that is in all of those areas we just talked about, there's not a specific prohibition against those things, black and white, in Scripture. There are principles in regards to all of those things, and I believe what would more so fall in line with the abuse of those things that would put it into the category of sin. But there's also, it seems like, a freedom given biblically on certain issues where as long as something is done not in an excessive way or in an abusive way, there could be leeway. So those would be examples in my mind right now.
Yeah.
Steve, what do you got?
Yeah, what do you got, Steve?
I mean, those are the ones that we're going to talk about, like tattoo.
That's one of the
Yeah,
ones.
man. But would you say also, like, because we were in an institution, like a
Yeah.
Bible college, that we couldn't, well, I don't know, when I was there, I couldn't go to the movies. I couldn't play with cards. I couldn't even listen to music in my
had
dorm.
to write a paper.
I had to write a paper on biblical principles.
Why you should be able
Why?
to
And
allow.
I remember asking why? Like why am I doing this? And I know the reason for not watching movies was because back when the organization started, it was like mid 30s, 40s, and 50s where movies started coming out, and some were bad. But they said if you go to the movie theater, you cannot control what you're watching. Where if you're watching at home, you can fast forward, you can pause it and stuff like that. So
You can close your eyes.
that's what I'm saying, or not watch
Or
the
walk
movie.
out.
Walk out.
Yeah.
yeah. And so I think
Nobody really does that.
yeah, and I think a lot of it's
I mean,
cult-
if you do that, you got superpower.
yeah, yeah. But I think
I mean, respect, as you said. You respect. I mean, just being honest.
You've never walked out of a movie before that you've been in, and you thought,
have I walked out of one?
No,
I walked out of
walked
one.
out of
I walked out of one movie.
sermons, but not movies.
Oh, wow.
oh
Yeah.
man,
You recently?
man, who,
Nah, this was like a
who
few
hurt
years.
you today?
What?
Who hurt you today?
Nobody. I'm just saying. I'm just
okay.
I'm just keeping it real.
Man.
But yeah,
I forgot I was gonna say so.
yeah. I would add to this. I would add I think that one thing that growing up, and even still is the case in the Dominican Republic, my culture, that it's like Sunday you have to wear your Sunday best. Like you have to be your best. You have to wear your best outfit. It's very
People
formal.
definitely are not wearing their Sunday best
Yeah,
today.
and then you have to dress up very nicely and everything. And so now it's there's an air of more
Casual.
more casual, where you feel comfortable.
Come as
some
you
people
are.
still dress up nice, but there's others that they're just casual. They're just okay, this is what I wear every day. And I think something more practical, for us as preachers, the acceptance of having hats on stage. That's something that
And you are opening it up right now.
yeah, I'm just saying,
Woo!
if you go, there's churches all over the country that's something that is slowly becoming more acceptable.
Yes. Yep.
Phones are
That
ringing
back
already.
in the days were probably not.
Phones are ringing. Your phone's ringing already?
Yeah, phone's lighting up right now.
Yeah,
Hate mail. There's hate mail coming.
mail. I'm not saying that I support it. I'm just saying
you?
that.
You support it though?
Do you?
Hats on stage?
I work-
Announcements?
Do you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything against it.
Oh, are you in favor of it?
I mean, I'm indifferent. If it's
So you don't have an opinion one way or the other?
Yeah, if we can do it, you're great. If we cannot do it, then great.
But do you think we should?
I'm indifferent.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a hill
So you
that
don't
I
wanna give an
want to
answer. I get
climb
it.
or die on.
I mean, you don't have an opinion.
Yeah, on this matter, no. Do
Okay.
you?
I do.
What is it?
My opinion?
Yeah.
My preference would be people who are leading from the front wouldn't be wearing a hat. That's just my preference. But since you don't have a preference, you're just indifferent.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
not a matter of biblical truth.
I didn't say it was. I was asking
Yeah,
if you had an
so-
opinion.
Yeah,
That's fine.
So I don't.
That's fine, man. Okay. Steve,
Mine's
you got an
depending on the audience.
Okay.
Youth event, I'm okay with the dude wearing a hat.
Yeah, I'm
Or
talking
guy.
about context of Sunday morning worship.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I wouldn't be.
Yeah. Context of Sunday morning worship. My preference is not to,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't.
Yeah.
But that's my preference personally. If someone else wants to, that's up to them. Do I feel like someone's sinning by doing it? I don't. Would I ever tell someone not to? I wouldn't, because I wouldn't
But
really
that would
care.
be something that I
But
can see down
what's
the road. I mean,
what's the
it's already
reason-
happening.
For me personally,
Yeah, you don't like
yeah, for
someone-
me personally, in the position I'm in, if I'm preaching or I'm leading in an upfront capacity in a Sunday morning worship service, knowing that there are multi generations present and there are multiple viewpoints, if I know my wearing a hat, for example, when I'm preaching on Sunday morning, would be an offense to a good number of people within the congregation, and I know that in advance, I would just choose not to.
Yeah.
And nor would I feel comfortable personally doing that. I just wouldn't.
Yeah, but Bruce, that was not the question.
About
The question was not your
No,
conviction. It was about whether or not it would down the road, you see things that are
No, I asked him
not
why.
acceptable.
yeah, he asked me why
Yeah,
me
but-
personally.
Yeah, why? He's
I was
like-
just answering his question, man.
That's all right. He's not the captain today.
Whoa,
I mean,
Captain.
He did cut me. I was about to answer a question. He
He's-
cut me off. He
he's-
cut me off
he
with that
just
question.
self-proclaimed himself as
No,
the
I'm just saying.
captain.
I didn't say I am. I just said he's
Hey,
not.
Captain Eric. Captain Eric. Captain Eric, lead the ship, man.
Come on.
Where we going?
Come on.
Steer the ship.
Listen,
Captain
parents.
Crunch,
Let's
Captain
talk about
Crunch.
parents.
Capitan.
Parenting.
He's the Capitan.
Cap-
You're
Capitan.
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 Yeah,
Parenting.
go
So
ahead, man.
before I open the floor for you guys, just a few statistics, just about social media.
Yes, Captain.
All right.
Yes, Captain.
85% of Americans, 85% of Americans, and this is coming from Smart Social, who's using they have done their own research, but also they're using sources from Pew Research, which is a website that is, whatever. 85% of Americans on a smartphone. 87% of American things on an iPhone. 95% of American teens have daily access to a smartphone. Now think about that. What that means. 95%. Think about what that means and what all that it is on our smartphone, right? 46% of teens report being online almost constantly. All right.
46% of teens?
Or teens reported to being online almost constantly, like in a given day.
Yeah.
All right. So a little bit more interesting. 34% of U.S. teens pick Snapchat as their favorite social media network in the fall of 2020, which I will still say that that's the case today with the youth. Now, if you don't know how Snapchat works, that should be something that
What's the percent again?
34%.
So 34% of teens say that's their preferred.
Yeah.
Okay.
Social media network. And so
That doesn't seem high, 34%.
It'll be higher,
well,
though.
and when you consider everything else I saw that, like TikTok, YouTube,
Yeah.
TikTok
Facebook,
probably is higher, though.
Instagram, it will rise more than the others. And so an average of 5,000 or an average of 5 billion snaps are created every single day.
5 billion.
5 billions.
That's a lot.
And that's coming directly from Snapchat. 48% of U.S. internet users are between the ages of 15 and 25 years. Or 48% of U.S. internet users between the ages of 15 and 25 years use Snapchat. So half of them that have access to the internet use Snapchat. TikTok had a total of 78.7 million users in the United States on the year 2021. Around 37.3 million of this were between the ages of 10 and 25. Now you start seeing
10 years, that's crazy.
Yeah, now you start seeing the trend. These are the things that are indoctrinating our kids. Like they're spending more time on their phones and on this platform than they are going to school and in churches, right?
Yeah.
So here's another interesting thing. 70% of low social 70% of teens that use social media will say that they feel low social and emotional well-being. And 29% of them will say that they feel high social emotional well-being. Many of them have deleted social media posts because they get too few likes. 43% feel like they have low social and emotional well-being, and 13 feel that they have high social and emotional well-being. Many of them the ones that feel bad about themselves because they're not getting comments or like posts, they will say that 43% of them are, on the lower end of self-esteem, and then the 11 of them are on the high end of self-esteem. And then they have those that have experienced cyberbullying will land on the 35%, and then 5% of them will not. I mean, and I could keep going on and on this, but all this to say, these are some scary statistics that maybe we're not so aware of the things that are happening with social media.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you guys want to add from there.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree.
Thanks, Captain.
I think there is obviously alarming usage from those statistics, and also if you just look around at any given venue, you find yourself with people, not just kids, right, but anybody. People are constantly in their smartphones.
Yeah.
Like it's constant. And if you go to a restaurant sometime, or you are even at like a movie theater, or if you are at a sporting event, take notice of where people's faces are constantly. They're down in their phones. Like people were at dinner together at lunch, family, and everybody has their smartphones out. So it's an alarming thing, I think, in general for families, but it's especially alarming the younger kids are because of what they have access to. All of the different media platforms that you mentioned, there is pornographic content, sexually explicit content, grooming content, destructive content, from violence to, you name it, on all of those platforms that is accessible to kids, students, anybody can access those things. And it is constantly in front of people's faces, including adults, but it's in particularly alarming for kids, obviously.
Yeah.
So as parents, there are some things we can do, in regards to the reality of social media and how our kids are accessing.
So you have kids that are in the age in that age category,
Yeah.
and Steve, you have kids that are going to be there soon. So with your kids, what are some of the rules that you have for social media? And then Steve, what are some of the rules that you're envisioning yourself setting up for your kids?
Yeah, so I'll share what we do, and some people listening might think, "Wow, that's super strict," and you guys are
I like it.
being overprotective.
I like
Um,
following my pastor.
people will listen be like, man, you're super strict. That's overprotective. They're not going to like what we do, and I want to apologize to those people for absolutely nothing, because that's the current phrase. Because
That's my pastor.
Because
And I'm the one that is like
Because-
feeling it
Nah,
today.
man, you
Listen,
feeling it.
It's one of those things.
333
It's
331
it's-
he knows the number
6453.
now.
It's one of those things. It's one of those things that what other people think about that doesn't matter to me, because they're not responsible for my kids, and so we
Say
are.
that again, because that needs to
Hey,
be
say for the
like,
people in the back.
yeah,
Yeah.
that needs to be
No,
the
I'm saying
understanding
what
of
other
experience.
people
Yes.
think. What other people think about our being too strict or too conservative with our kids doesn't really matter to me, because they're not responsible for my kids. I am, and my wife and I are. So we've set parameters in place that are quite strict. So, and when I say quite strict, I don't think they're strict. I think people think they might be strict because of the open access they give to their kids. And I'm not going to judge those people and tell them what they should do. I'm just saying, okay, just as they are free with their children to do what they think is best for them, so are we. So what we have in place, first of all, we have 2 of our children have phones. And kind of the rule of thumb that Shashan and I put in our house was when the kids get into middle school, where they are no longer released to the parents specifically. When they're in elementary school, they have what's called parent pickup. They have to wait with a teacher till you pick them up as a parent. They check that you're the correct parent getting them. You have to have a tag. And then they release the kid to the parent. When they hit middle school, in our school district, they are then released from school at a particular time, and it's expected that they'll, get a ride with their parent or with whoever else, but they're not only releasing kids to their parents. So kids get dismissed from school, and that's their responsibility. They have to get home if they're not riding the bus. So we felt that it would be appropriate for our kids when they get to middle school to have a phone, so that when they are released from school, if they get out from school, if they can't find us when we're picking them up, or if they're going to an event or activity where they're no longer basically handed off to a parent, they have access to get a hold of us whenever they need to. That's how we made that decision. So we decided we would do that. In addition to that, it is also helpful because whenever they are somewhere, if we need to get a hold of them directly, we can communicate directly with them and not be dependent upon others. But we also make the determination we felt they were responsible enough to have that. So that being said, it's not open access for them if they have a smartphone. The 2 kids in our home that have smartphones, they do not have any social media accounts. Nothing. No Facebook, no Instagram, no Snapchat, no TikTok, nothing. And if they do, tell me. If someone's listening, like, yes, they do, I need to know that. Because let me put it this way.
3-3.
They are not permitted.
Sorry. 3-3-1.
They
3-3-1.
are
Sorry,
not
3-3-1.
permitted to have social media accounts. Do they? I hope not. Now, I'm not naive to think that my kids are perfect and they're not going to do anything that I don't know about. So that's why I'm saying, help me out, people.
Yeah.
If you're here and you're like, nope, your daughter has a social media account, I need to know
Since
that.
you bring it up.
I need to know that. I'll give you a gift card to a dinner place of your choice.
Oh,
If you-
hold on. Since you
wait,
bring it
wait,
up.
hold on,
But listen. So,
As is you,
so
as
they're,
per you, Pastor.
they're not permitted. They're not permitted to have social media right now.
So at what age will they be permitted?
Haven't decided yet. I just know it's not
still
yet.
TBD.
I just know it's not yet.
We take it by the year.
Here's why with social media. There is so much what I would call evil.
Yeah.
There is so much evil and so much destructive content on social media. Paul said this in Philippians chapter 4. He said, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. So when Paul lays that out in Scripture, that's what we should be filling our heads with. If I could describe the content that is on social media that is geared towards children specifically, it would be the opposite of these things. Whatever is honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable, that is not what is there for kids to access at all. And I would even say there's very little apart from that even for adults to access, although I do see reasons for adults to have access to social media that would be profitable for adults as it relates to testimony for Christ, as it relates to outreach, as it relates to being informed. But I feel like adults can handle more than kids could or should handle.
Yeah.
So that's why we have not allowed social media for our kids to this point. Will they get to a point of maturity and where we feel with strict perimeters they could access those things? Possibly. I just don't know when that point will be yet. But at this point, no access to social media. When it comes to screen time, because they can access, different apps and things like that that aren't social media apps necessarily. So, for example, would be YouTube, where they can watch videos and things like that. We would look at that a little bit different in the sense that you can put strict parameters as far as what they can watch on YouTube, what they can upload to YouTube, and so we have parental control over that. And we limit their screen time. If they, I don't even know, my wife is the one who puts the limit of time, but if that time limit gets hit, and I don't know if it's an hour, maybe an hour and a half of screen time that they can have in a day, but if they hit their limit, their phone locks with a password that we set, that if they want additional screen time, they have to come to us and we put in a code for them to access screen time. So there's things parents can do. That's what we do.
Yeah.
People think it's really strict. Some people think that's crazy. That's what we feel like we should be doing right now for our kids.
The average screen time on a student varies between 8 hours to 12 hours a day.
Which is absolutely crazy.
crazy.
Think about that.
Yeah. And I'm not saying
That
we're
means
doing
that
everything.
they get home at 4 p.m.
Yeah.
because most of them cannot be on their phone while in school. And they are on their phone by the time they go to bed, literally staring at their phone or having it open in their phone.
And to clarify, I don't want that to come across in any way, shape, or form like arrogant, like we know what we're doing and we got it all figured out. We're figuring it out. And so that's what we've decided to do for our kids. And it does not have to do with the fact that that's what we have measured as the best. That's just what we started at and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And so far, we haven't had any issues as far as with that being a problem. Now, if there are issues or problems, we'll adjust. And the older the kids get, the more mature they get, the more we'll look at things and evaluate things. But right now, those are some parameters we've set at this point. So,
What about you, Steve?
No, that's good. Yeah, it was funny though, because I don't know when we talked about it when he told me about that. I remember going home and telling Jess that about like social media, because I know that's coming for us, and I've seen when I was a youth pastor, a lot of kids feel the pressure of getting a smartphone because everybody has one and getting social media and all that. But I like a couple of years ago, I read an article. I think Sean McDowell wrote it, but he talked about like for our kids to get a car, they have to show that they're responsible to get a car. And he says, why don't we do that with smartphones?
Sure.
Like, why don't we show, okay, in order to get a phone, you got to be responsible.
Yep.
And that too. So I know, like, conversation, I mean, even me thinking, it's one of the things that I'm praying for wisdom of, okay, how do I explain to my kids what's more important? Like I think of Colossians 3:2, set your mind on things that are above, not on things on this earth. And and I see that a lot with social media, especially with teenagers. Like their mind is set on, I didn't get so much likes, and they get so depressed. I don't know if you've seen it as a youth pastor, but as a youth pastor, that when I would like, when they would say, hey, I want to give God my social media because I got mad I didn't get a lot of likes. I'm like, what? I was like, okay, but that's their struggle. Like they want to be accepted through that. But for me, I'm trying to tell my kids, like, are you already accepted by the Lord, as you are? But also, I want them to try to teach them how to set their minds are above, what the Lord wants for their lives. And so, like, that's one of the things is even Jess and I talked about is, okay, we got find ways to show they're responsible enough to get a phone. But like I said, and I encourage you, like Bruce, that's something that you and my wife and I talk about, like your girls, like it's awesome because we have a conversation with them. Like they can talk, they're not on their phones, and I think I see the difference on that. Not to say like every social media, whatever, but that's my fear is that I don't want my kids to be so addicted that they need to be in a social media. Like right now, like my oldest plays Switch, and that's kind of like the big thing. Okay, we don't want him to think about that always, and so we put a limit on that. And so we're even practicing with that. Like I know that's not social media, but he loves playing that to the point where only on Saturdays he's allowed to play that for certain hours. Now sometimes if we need a break, whatever, like like y'all play, your drama's crazy. But I think it's showing them the responsibility, of how to handle it is important, and that's my thing. Like even everything. Like if I want a car, my parents, they say, hey, here's some expectations that you need to work on that too. But I think it's setting the expectations And that's what, again, that's what it's important to learn from those like you that are going through it, and just asking those questions. Okay, how you handle this? How should I handle it? Even though you guys are still trying to figure it out, but I think that's just so important to understand that this parenting thing's not do it on your own, but learn from people who are in it or doing out of it. So
Yeah, and I mean, there's times that kids will be on their phones, and it's fine. Whatever, like, our youngest Leah likes to watch videos on the phone. So like, if we're occupied doing something, or she's restless because something, we'll be like, honey, do you want to watch a video? And like, we would give her. And some people like judge people when they do that with their kids, because the kids need something to distract them into. Like, I'm not an advocate of like rip everything off the kids and not let them watch. My point is, screen time and social media time typically is in an isolated way, in the sense that it's not when you're with your family and there's nothing good. But screen time in isolation, for in particular for teenagers, is a dangerous thing, because they don't want people to see what they're looking at. They don't want people to see what their eyes are taking in, and it's a dangerous thing. And so I'm not an advocate of remove all screens from kids. Some people are. I'm not an advocate of like, if your kids are watching anything on their smartphones or on their devices, you should be ashamed. I'm not saying that at all. I'm specifically referencing social media accounts, which, when I say social media, because I know a lot of people lump a lot of things into social media. When I think of social media, I'm thinking of Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok. Twitter is considered social media, though most kids aren't on Twitter. But those are the ones that I'm thinking of, that are specific to, you have accounts and followers, and you're interacting socially with people's pictures and videos and likes and comments. And I think that that's where there's a lot of danger. But the other thing I would just encourage with parents is, it's okay to tell your kids to put their phones away. Like, we try to make it known to our kids, and they don't always listen to this. But in particular, like, when we're with people, if they have their phones out and their face is buried in their phone, I will go up to them and say, you better put your phone away right now. Like, and I will let them know. And they're gonna do that. They're gonna put it away.
What's the voice that you use?
What's that?
Show the voice.
It varies. But if
Is it hat
if I
backwards,
see it
or-
happen, you need to, like, it's okay as parents.
Hey, put the phone
If
away
I can encourage, and I don't do that.
Right now.
If I can encourage parents, it's okay to be a parent. Like, it's okay to be the parent to your kid, to be the authority in your kid's life. Like, there are parents who are scared to death to be the authority for their kids. That's your role, right?
Yeah,
It's,
which that's gonna lead me to what I was gonna say, of like the importance of being a parent to the kids. And like, I think that being in youth ministry for for a little bit, I get to see this so often, where like there's not so much supervision on what's going on. I just want to say to the parents that are listening, like, listen, I've had kids sneak phones on retreats and watch porn on retreats at the church. Like, the kids that you would least expect it, they're doing things on their phone. I know of students, and I know of people that have been texting inappropriate things to each other, that they're sending pictures to each other that are inappropriate, that they're doing all of these things behind the parents' back. And the parents are the ones thinking, oh yeah, my son or my daughter, they're good, godly kids. Like, they're very mature in their faith, and they're naive to the reality of what they're doing. What I would say to those parents is, listen, like, be the parent. You have that role of being a parent. Check on their phone. Grab their phone. If they're in your homes, whether they pay for their phone bills or not, if they're in your home, they're your responsibility. Take their phone away from them sporadically. Check on them. Go through all their texts. Go on social media. If there was one app that I would be the highest advocate for not to have on their phone, will be Snapchat, because it's an app that you cannot keep a record of anything. Don't let them have Snapchat. Now my students are gonna hate me for saying this, but don't let them have Snapchat. They can send picture, and I'm gonna be transparent. They're sending picture of each other's naked, and there's no record of that, because it doesn't get stored on their phones, and the other people receiving it cannot keep it.
Let me give a practical challenge to our parents that are listening to this. If you have kids,
I get far out.
If you have kids, let me ask you to do this one exercise today. Go to your child, like your student, in particular, middle school, high school student that has a smartphone, has a phone, and go to them and say, I'd like your phone and for you to unlock it for me right now, because I want to look through it, and see what their reaction is.
Yeah.
If you do
Because
one
if
of these,
the,
they're
if
like,
the student, if
so
their
why? Like, why?
if their
Who are you?
reaction
Yeah,
is
I'm your mom. I'm your dad.
extremely defensive, if it's absolutely not, if they refuse to give you that
up.
phone,
Thumbs up.
as a parent, use some logic here. Why? What would be the reason? Now, I would equally say the same thing that if you're a husband or a wife and your spouse also refuses, if you go to them as a spouse and say, "Can I see your phone? Can you unlock it for me? I'd like to look through it." And they refuse, to me, in both of those instances, some serious red flags should pop up. If in either one of those instances that they are refusing to allow you to look. We have a rule in our house, and I'm not saying this has to be the rule for everybody, but with my wife and I, my wife at any time that she wants to can access my phone. She has my password.
That's what my wife
She can
too,
pick
yep.
up my phone anytime she wants, look through every single thing on my phone, have access. I have nothing to hide. Now,
Yep.
if people are like, "Well, I might be planning a surprise for myself," plan it another way then.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how often you planning stuff, right? That you can't do that.
Yeah.
But and then when it comes to like kids, like my kids know. Like, and here's the thing, you have to use wisdom as a parent. Don't call to them when they're upstairs and be like, "I need your phone. I want to look at it."
beep, beep.
Catch
And
them
then,
off
and
guard.
yeah, and then
Delete.
3
Catch them
minutes
off
later
guard.
they come down. They're like, "Here you go." You go up to them in their presence and say, "Hey, I would like your phone because I want to look through it. Give me, put your passcode in."
And don't let them bring their phone to bed. That's
I
the
was gonna
most
say that.
dangerous
I know,
things.
that's- I know, we
Like,
tell- that's the
or
same
to the
thing.
bathroom.
I
Be
was-
realistic. Like, I'm just saying,
Yeah,
to
lay
the
it out.
bathroom. Yeah, I'm
Lay
just
it
laying
out.
out.
Yeah.
Say that.
Like, and here's one thing that you can tell too. Like, and this is an insight that I have that I don't tell. Like, I don't tell my students, but if they ever gave me their phones, I call it the emoji check, which is like if you grab anyone's phone, especially if they have an iPhone, you go on their conversation, you click to text, it will tell you what are the frequent emoji that emojis that they're frequently using. You can tell by those emojis the type of conversation or lingo that they're having,
Sure.
because students and people in general, we like to use emojis.
Yeah.
And so that gives you an idea of the type of conversation that your students are having. Don't like, again, we need to stop being so innocent when it comes to our kids. Like, listen, statistics will say, like the era of pornography, they will say that 95 to 98% of students are introduced or have been either introduced or have been exposed to pornography by the age of 11.
Yeah.
That would include guys and girls.
Yeah.
That's the statistic. Now, does that mean that they're addicted to that? No, but that's just on that alone. Like, we cannot be, as parents, we can and leaders, we cannot be so naive to think, yeah, my kid is not wrestling with that. My students are not wrestling with that. That's just the reality of the world that we live in. We talk about how many hours they spend on their phone. There's no way that in those 8 hours in just one single day, all the information that they're accessing is good and glorifying.
Yeah, I mean, so to just use an analogy here and like an illustration, if there was a storefront that existed, that was a storefront of videos, and you knew in that storefront you could walk down the aisles of that store, and to the left you had a room that was filled with pornographic material and videos that were constantly playing. To the right you had, just violent, beyond imaginability, like of violent videos and things that were playing on your right. Down a little bit farther on the left, you had abusive videos where it was, whether it was sexually abusive type videos, verbally abusive type, mentally abusive type videos. A little farther down on the right, you had how to commit suicide and how to do this effectively and how to, basically destroy your physical self. And a little bit farther down, you had degradation of women and you had racial things. And you had these videos constantly playing in this storefront. And you open a door and you tell your student, however old they are, go ahead, have fun. Like, you would think a parent was absolutely insane to allow that.
Yeah.
And to shut the door and say, I'll check back on you in an hour.
Let me know how you're doing.
Let me know how
How
you
you
But
doing.
literally
Yeah.
on social media and with these things,
what it
that is what it is. Like, any route they want to go and look at and take in is there. But the worst part about with social media, to be even beyond that, is that there's crowds of people who are constantly chiming in while those things are being watched.
encouraging
It, participating in it. So we have to put things in perspective, right, as parents. And so do your phone check. As a parent, ask your kid today.
present, yeah.
Give me
Today.
your
Start
phone.
today. Do
Let
right
me
now.
look at
Well,
it and
right-
look through
yeah.
it. If your spouse is, tell your spouse you want to see their phone today.
Let me see your phone right
And
now.
you want to look through it and see what their reaction is. Now, if they're like hesitant, and maybe there's something on there that they're embarrassed about or whatever. I'm not saying every time that they're like in the depths of awful things. I'm just saying it should be something that we should be okay with if we're pure before God, and we want that to be accessible. As a parent, we should be able to access that for our kids because we care enough about them to do that. As a spouse, we should be okay with our spouse knowing what we are engaging in on our
At the very
smartphones.
least, it will open the room for conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what you want. I mean, as parents, our role is to train our kids in the way of the Lord. Is
Yeah.
to make sure that they grow
Absolutely.
to be men and women that love God, that honor God, and that serve Him
Yeah.
with their lives for the rest of their life. And so,
It's good.
in order for us to do that, we cannot be afraid and shy about it. We need to take our role seriously.
I agree. It's good.
I think it was great. Next week, Bruce will be the captain, but we would have we will have a special guest and
Nice.
another special guest, and I'm excited for that.
Listen, maybe next week you two could be the host of the special guest because you guys know the special guest.
Well, yeah. Well, no, he's probably going to join the three of us.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I'm
so it'll be
here.
4 of us.
Yeah, well, we'll
I
see.
don't know.
We'll see.
Okay.
It'll
be fun.
pending
It'll
Adam
be good.
Littlephil's
It'll be good.
ability. But
Yeah.
so you don't want to miss it. I will say he will be you will consider maybe an expert of Generation Z. That's what he
Nice.
does for a living, and so he has a lot of insight on the ins and out of Generation Z, and so
Nice.
we're excited to have him next week.
It's great. Hopefully you'll be in a better mood next week.
Hopefully, I'll be in a better mood.
It'll be good.
But I do know the phone number 330-331-6453.
Excellent. I mean,
So-
you're like 8 episodes early.
Yeah,
That's good.
I'm an overachiever.
Well done.
Achiever.
Steve, what's the question, man? We ask it every week.
What's your life like beyond the pew?
What is your life like
Wow.
beyond the pew? We hope it's honoring to the Lord. Join us next week. Bye-bye.